I want to welcome today to the Edge of Success Business Roundtable two new friends from me, Trish and Tarini. And I'm going to begin by asking them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their background, some metrics that help people in business success and scaling and development. So let me start with you, Trish, if you wouldn't mind just sharing anything you think would be interesting to us so we can learn a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Trish Higgins. I am the founder of a company called Mountain Leadership Advisory and Consulting, and I live in Sarasota, Florida, where I grew up on the HR side of the house and talent building out leadership teams. With that, as I climbed the ladder, there wasn't training given when you had a team, so I needed to figure it out. They didn't have training when you had to deal with conflict within your group. So I had to figure it out. I built a reputation of having teams that loved me as well as business clients that loved me. And people came to me to say, hey, what you doing? How'd you figure it out? How did you do this? I worked at GE, Time Inc., Henkel / Sun Products. And as people left, they would call me and say, Trish, can you help me with this issue I'm having and what to do? So I did that. And that's when the side gig really started, where I started making money. I was both the COO and the CHRO at an asset management firm here in Sarasota. Unfortunately, I found out that there was some shenanigans going on in accounting. And when that happened, and being an officer, I made the decision that I wasn't going to stay because I didn't trust a lot of people anymore in the company. I decided to build my coaching business, and I coach founders, executives, CEOs down to the director level. It's the people that are really building the companies, but hit a wall when there are hard decisions to be made, leadership challenges, or I help them to grow and get out of their own way, quite frankly.
Okay, thanks, Trish. Interesting background. Sometimes you don't really recognize it when it's first happening, but you can look back on it and see how it all kind of came together. Trini, I'm glad to have you here as well. So maybe you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about you and your company and what you're doing.
Thanks for having me, Dave, and super amazing to meet you, Trish. I'm Tarini, and I'm the founder and CEO of Detective AI. We build foundational models to detect audio deepfakes. I know that sounds like a very tech verbose thing to say, but in very simple words, our goal is to help every single person with a mobile phone identify whether what they're hearing is real or AI generated. And beyond that, we're trying to also help an average person with a mobile phone understand whether what they're consuming or what they're hearing is actually something intended with fraud or not. So pretty much building the trust layer for all forms of media that any person with a mobile phone consumes. That's the vision of what we have at Detective AI. And that's what we're building towards, rather. I've been in the tech space since the past 10 years. I'm based in SF. I used to be based in India, different parts of the world. But for the longest time before this, I was working on driverless cars. I led the team for India's first driverless race car, to the point where I realized that I want to do something massive in the space of vision in AI, which is a very important aspect of what I do today. And I think that's pretty much where my journey started. But I think the problem I'm solving for today is actually because of my grandfather. My grandfather was actually affected personally by a deepfake. And when he fell victim to it, he lost a couple of $1,000s. And when that happened, I knew that, hey, there's a big problem to be solved for here. That's when I started working in this space. And today we're currently beating most open source deepfake detection models. That's a great technical validator for us. And we're only getting started. We've onboarded some of the best advisors, investors on board, like Anthropic. We're very bullish on the future that trust is going to be an important vector of. And we hope to build that trust for anyone with a mobile phone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes great sense. And frankly, it's needed because it's getting harder and harder to determine what is real and what is not real. Trust, I think, is a real key thing in really every area today. If there's not the trust there, then people are not going to hire you and you're not going to be able to serve people and help them. I'm Dave Pennington, and I actually live on the coast of Maine. And my background is kind of threefold. I started actually in ministry, believe it or not, and mostly larger scale churches with private schools, and that, we might have a staff of 80 to 100 people. I also have had a stint in private education where I've been a school administrator. I was an executive director of an organization with 37 schools in it, president of a state group, on a national board, adjunct prof, so a lot in private education. Once again, highly administrative, lots of hiring, lots of people development. And then about 10 years ago, I started pen coaching and consulting. I started more and still do some of this of leadership development. I just found whenever there was a problem in most organizations, it almost always came back to a leadership issue. And so I know that if I can help the leader, then I can help everybody in that organization. In fact, sometimes I call it the pebble in a pond concept. So if I can throw a pebble in a pond, there's a ripple effect. And by helping the leader, it helps everybody in that organization, their families, and all of that. And then I've done a lot with scaling. I've always been really just good at finding, I say, getting the right people on the bus, getting them in the right seat, and then actually developing them, which is, I think, a real key, because a lot of times we sort of expect people to develop themselves, and some of them will, but most of them will reach a point where they just sort of flatline after that. They're going to grow to a certain point, and then after that, they need some help. So I like to lean in and really help people develop, particularly their key leaders. I made one last shift. I got certified in valuations and acquisitions, and I'm currently working to help small business owners actually increase the value of their company and position themselves for selling when the time is right, or passing on to the kids, or becoming a silent owner. There's a lot of different ways you can exit, and I'm really enjoying that space. I bumped into something called the silver tsunami, which is that boomers are aging out, and many of them have a business that in the next 3 to 5 years they're going to pass on, shut down, sell, do something with. I'm focusing in really helping business owners have high valuation and be very attractive to buyers, so that they can then retire, or if they want to go on and build another business, whatever they want to do. So that's the space that I'm working in. One of the things I do is I provide assessments to small business owners where they can get an idea of the value of their company. And it's based upon 8 metrics. And the 8 metrics are really, really key for 2 things. If you want to scale your company, it's a key. If you want to position your company to sell, it's a key. And so I want to take just a moment, if I can, and just share with you kind of a quick overview of these metrics. Financial performance, sometimes you're going to have a lot of revenue, but if you don't manage your revenue well, you might not be that profitable. So it's very important to make sure you're managing things well. Monopoly control has to do with how you differentiate yourself from other people that are in your space. And by that, I mean, what's the advantage? Why should they work with you versus others? And you want to make sure that you sort of differentiate yourself so that people really have a desire to work with you and you can uniquely help them. Switzerland structure is more with the idea of how dependent you are either upon one employee, one customer, or one supplier. Particularly if your company is smaller, you can have one customer, for example, that might represent 50 or 60% of your income, which is a little risky, because if that one customer goes away, then half of your income goes away. So that's important. Valuation teeter-totter has the idea of cash flow. You have cash in, you have cash out, but it often doesn't work that way. You're sort of juggling cash flow. And then a recurring revenue, and that's the one we're going to come back to here in just a moment, has to do with if you have a way to kind of create an automatic monthly income. And we'll talk some about that and some creative ways to be able to do it. Growth potential is more so the idea of how likely are you to grow in the months or years ahead, and at what rate. And then customer satisfaction, obviously, is just how likely people are to continue to do work with you, add services for you in the future, or even maybe recommend you to their friends. And then hub and spoke, which is actually a key one, is the idea of how dependent your business is upon you. And what we've discovered is that the more dependent your business is upon you, then the valuation tends to go down and the sellability tends to go down. So those are the 8 metrics, and they're all really key if you want to scale your company or if you want to sell your company. Now, today I want to focus on recurring revenue. Now, some businesses, that's a little harder than other businesses. And I'll give you an example. I heard about a florist who was very concerned. The floral industry is pretty seasonal. You have Mother's Day and you have, Valentine's and key days like that they get a lot of business. They're just slammed when they get that business, and it's all they can do to be able to produce what they need to produce. There are other times they're kind of dependent upon customers just walking in or calling to do business, and that that's pretty challenging if you think about it from an income standpoint, because you really don't know what you're going to get. So anyway, these couple guys had a floral company, and they lived in a city, and there were a lot of high-end hotels within that city. And so they got the idea of going to the managers of those high-end hotels and offering to provide a service on a weekly basis. So they would always have fresh flowers in the foyer or the lobby. In some cases, multiple arrangements. They would provide the container for the flowers. They would choose what was going to be there. They would take care of everything. The manager didn't have to do anything. And then they would just charge a flat rate per month to do that. And what that did, it created recurring revenue, and it gave them cash flow that was consistently coming in, so they didn't have to worry very much about having the resources that they needed. About cash flow, or we'll call it recurring revenue, and maybe some ideas like in the coaching space. You're in the coaching space, I'm in the coaching space. So how could we create some services that would engage people, where we would have consistent income coming in on a monthly basis? I always say, think of like Netflix. Yeah, when you subscribe to something, I mean, they want you to view what you're paying for, but frankly, they get paid whether you view anything or not. It's a consistent income coming in every month. What are your thoughts here as we think a little bit about recurring revenue? I don't know if you've given that much thought in your space.
And actually, just having this conversation, listening to you, gave me an idea where you can set up a lower cost coaching / training where individuals sign up and receive a training every month.
Okay. So give me an example. When you think about training, what are your thoughts about what you might provide there for people?
For example, I would do this for high potential individuals in companies. They may not have been recognized by the company yet, but they do want to be recognized and do want to hone their skills. So the first one would be around leadership disciplines, behaviors, and habits, where you're signing lots of people up, will be leadership and the power of perception.
Okay. So the idea is that these are skills maybe they need to develop, or growth that they need to have. And let's just toy with this a little bit, since it's just the two of us. We get a little extra freedom here. This is obviously almost more of an entry level, if you want to think of it like that, compared to your one-on-one coaching.
Exactly.
Let's take a ballpark number. What's a number that you might charge for something like that?
I would say probably $1,500.
Okay. How often would you meet?
Once a month.
Okay. And maybe a 12-month engagement? Okay. And the 1,500, is that for the entire engagement or the monthly engagement?
Entire.
Okay. So let's just play with that for a little bit. 1,500 a month. And let's say if you did groups, for example, what would be a group amount that you'd be comfortable with? Well, let's just take 15.
15.
Okay. So if I took the $1,500 and I multiply that times 15, one group would be $22,500. Okay. Now, the nice thing about what you're talking about is if you had more interest, you could do more than one group.
Exactly.
Okay. And the nice thing is the content doesn't change. You don't have to create other deliverables.
Develop it once.
So obviously, even if you had just two groups, you're talking $45,000 of income. Often the people that work with you, and they get a taste of working with you, and they see the results that you can help them develop or deliver, or growth that they can experience, then that usually causes them to want to know more about your higher end program. That would be one-on-one, which obviously you would charge more for that. But it would almost be like a lead contact and relationship that would lead to a higher opportunity to actually coach them in, more of an executive way, like a one-on-one way. Is that how you see it working? Now, the truth is, a lot of times, as you mentioned earlier, the companies are not helping them.
No.
I mean, there's nothing there. I always say that corporations are the world's worst at onboarding. They have no onboarding process. It's like, here's your computer, here's your desk, here's the company manual, hope you make it. I mean, that's about the extent of it, And I find when people come into a company, they don't really know what they need to do to succeed. I mean, they have a general idea, but they're not clear. And if they're not clear, they're fishing around for, in some cases, 6, 12, maybe even 18 months to truly understand their job and what they need to do to be successful very frustrating for them, and they're not getting much guidance, and they don't want to ask because that is embarrassing, and they're afraid that
It shows that you don't know what you're doing.
I always say that, the person that hired you or the department that you come into, boy, it'd be really nice if you had someone who would just right from the get-go say, hey, let's talk a little bit about your role, and let me help you kind of figure out what you really need to do to succeed in this role, and sort of collaboratively develop it together so there's clarity and there's really clear objectives. And I don't know how you found it, but I found it in most roles there's about 3 to 5 things you need to do very well to succeed. But if you don't know what they are, you may spend 6 months trying to just determine what they are.
Exactly.
And they're frustrated and they're discouraged, and then often it only shows up when you have a review. You learn what you didn't know after the fact, which is not
Yeah.
not wise. So I could see, how all of this was kind of correlate together, where, if you could really help in your work, and you can kind of chat about this a little bit, Trish, but maybe even selling more kind of a package like that to corporations, where the role as they are hiring, that you would provide some input like that. I could see that being recurring revenue too, because
Yes.
they're hiring all the time and they don't have the personnel or even frankly, the interest sometimes in providing those kind of services. But I could see how that could be something that could be very helpful for you. And obviously, it could be substantial more money as well. Any thoughts about that?
I've thought of a lot of things like that. As you were talking about when you want to sell your company, that's something that's transferable.
Yeah. Well, it's attractive because you've got relationships, and your contractual relationships where you're providing a service year after year after year after year to those companies. And then as you get known for those kind of things, that all adds up over a period of time. And the nice thing about it is, you've got the expertise, you've got the content, you've got the information, you've got the form. I mean, you've done all this. It's not like it's new to you. And so it would be very easy to package it and sell it to a company or a corporation, that this is a service that you can provide for their new employees or for junior type level. And you could have some consistent, steady income. I don't know how you feel as a coach, but sometimes I feel like, sometimes you're riding pretty well, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden this one rolls off and that one rolls off, and you're scrambling to try to replace that, particularly if they're high income clients. Has that been your experience?
Yes, feast or famine.
Yeah. So maybe that's something that, would be good to give some thought to. I try to create things that are wash, rinse, and repeat, where I'm not having to develop new content all the time or new information all the time. I take what I know and what I'm good at doing and package it in something that I can repeat over and over again. Maybe with different companies, but it's basically the same content. And the more I do it, the better I get at it, and the better the impact or the results are.
Exactly.
Has that been your experience?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So anyway, this might be something that we both can give some thought to, just recurring revenue. The whole idea of, okay, what could we do that would allow us to be able to have some consistent recurring revenue? I always say, think like you're an alarm company. Alarm companies make money when they install your alarm system, but that's not where they make most of their money. They make most of the money through providing the monthly monitoring of it. And ideally, you never want it to go off, but you want to have the service in case it goes off, that the police or fire or people are called. They'll make some money on installing that system, but where they make most of their money is that monthly installment fee of monitoring your security system. And really, unless you have a problem with them or they keep raising their fees or something, you never change.
Right.
There's no reason to change.
Exactly.
So as their footprint gets bigger, their income just keeps going up, and really all of that is automated, and it's pretty nice, when you think about it.
It's easy to do.
Yeah. One of the ones is hub and spoke. I know as a coach, sometimes that's pretty challenging, because it can be really too dependent upon you. And frankly, if you're not working, you're probably not making any money. What have you done in your business to try to offload some things so that you feel like not everything is really riding on you?
There's some really cool tools coming out with AI that you can automate a lot of things, because for finding clients, I focus mostly on LinkedIn and reaching out to people I don't know through inviting them first, because I've been in the professional space for so many years. I know so many people where this might sound like a tiny amount to some, it sounds like a huge amount to others, but I have about 6,000 people in my LinkedIn network. And I reach out to 20 of them a day, see if they're open to a chat, just to get to know each other again and where you're at and have a connection and a catch up. It would be great having something else do that.
Yeah, to automate some of that so that you're not having to do it yourself per se.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, have you done anything with like virtual assistants?
I haven't. I first thought about that, and
Yeah, I know a lot of people are using AI, you know.
but those are the type of roles that also AI is replacing.
Sure. Yeah. I'm glad you came today, and I hope this was
And
helpful
thank
for
you.
you. I appreciate you being with me today.
Of
So
course.
thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dave.